Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coffee with Carl. First of all, what I want to do is thank you because last week I was feeling a little bit under the weather. You might hear I still have a little bit of that in my throat, but I'm seriously, I'm definitely on the mend. And it's amazing to see the well wishes that come through. I mean, it's like I was feeling fine. I just sounded like crap, but everybody was like, "Hope you feel better. Hope you feel better." And it's just really, really nice to see that. So thank all of you. I feel much better. The first thing I want to talk about is actually something that is going to lead into the first drop, but I had these two things, and it wasn't until 2 minutes ago that I realized I had them, and it might make an interesting comparison, okay? And of course, this is not going to be the detailed B-roll comparison that you normally see, but I want to talk about it nonetheless because I think that this is an interesting situation here. Okay, this is the Duckworth Snowcrest, all right? It's $599. It's a $600 overshirt, okay? So shirt jack, whatever. And if you know me, you know that I'm not a big fan of shirt jacks, but I am a huge fan of wool, so I'm a bit conflicted with this one. Now, it's nicely put together. What they did on the inside of this, and a lot of times you'll see brands do this. Matter of fact, I have an old Woolrich flannel, wool flannel, that does something very similar, and they'll actually put like some cotton lining on the inside, like strips of cotton, which this one also did. And I think what that it has to do with is wool is kind of, it's very hard wearing and all that stuff, but it also has some properties that maybe aren't so tough. So if you were to take wool, you could pull it apart, right? The fibers seem to let go of one another very easily. Now, I'm speaking in broad terms, okay? And I'm talking about this type of woolen fabric, not worsted wool like a suit, which is different. What they've done, though, is that they've kind of used these strips here to in every spot that there may be a little bit of tension, like along the placket, along the collar, and matter of fact, I think maybe even inside the flaps. Yes, so even inside the flaps here, where you're pulling on the fabric to add a little bit of rigidity, which is nice. I think that's a good idea, and it also kind of looks cool. Like I gotta say, like that the green and black looks pretty sharp. This is a great looking piece. They did a nice job with this. However, this week I got this, which I think dropped last week, if I remember correctly. And this is from Heat Straps, which is a very similar wool. And I'm going to tell you this much. If I just kind of touch both of these, they're so similar that I couldn't tell you which one is which. They are slightly different tones. I don't know if you can tell. This one has a little bit more yellow in it. This one maybe has a little bit more gray leaning, but they are both kind of like a medium green, which I love. Now, Heat Straps, what they did on this is, this is a different type of shirt altogether. It's a pullover type, and it has a single chest pocket. Rather than using internal strips of cotton, they've used waxed canvas around those edges, right? So they have it there. They have it here on the placket. The actual flap is made out of waxed canvas. That's just a cool way to tie it together. And then they've used their traditional Heat Straps snaps, which, I'm a fan of. I think that now that they're branded, I think they look even cooler, whereas before they could look a little bling bling. It was a lot of shiny brass metal kind of looking at you. However, I think that with this, is this debossed? I don't know if it is. I think it's actually embossed. So I believe embossed is more or less when you're pressing in, and debossed is when they are raised, right? So these are actually pressed in. They feel really good, and it looks awesome. So this really is kind of supposed to take the place of almost like those Patagonia pullovers that are so ubiquitous, especially here in New England. We see everybody wearing those. Well, here's an opportunity to own something that's similar that, is actually made in America, made out of 100% wool. So that's a great option there. So this isn't really an overshirt. This is probably best as a layering piece, to be honest with you. They even gave it that type of collar here, which works well with another collar that has, points to it, right? So this would work really well underneath any jacket. Whereas the Snowcrest is kind of just meant to be a light jacket on its own, and I could see a lot of people wearing this, especially if you have a vest over the top. Let me look up the prices of these two, because I know that Snowcrest is $599, and using the magic of editing, I'm going to tell you right now what the Heat Straps one is. It's $379. So, all other things being equal, that's a big difference for a piece that you may use in the same capacity. And like I said, feeling both of them, So there's actually a little bit of a difference. This is the heat straps is 26 ounce wool. The Snowcrest is 24 ounce wool. I can't feel a difference between the two. They're so close. I mean, when you're talking about that much of a difference, it's very difficult to tell. But they're both really, really nice. However, I would say that this is really expensive, the Duckworth. $600 for that is a lot of money. Now, it is a more complicated design. They have 2 chest pockets. They have, shoulder no, there's no shoulder gussets. I'm sorry. But regardless, I think that the price savings is actually worth it in this case. Now, that is as long as you like the style, because they're a little bit different. But I saw these two, and they were just kind of calling out to me as far as, okay, well, if I'm going to use one of them as a layering piece, which is it going to be? I think the heat straps works better as a layering piece. The Duckworth may look better as a standalone thing just because it has a collar like that, but it's all personal preference. You know what I mean? And I will say that the cost savings of over $200 with the heat straps goes a long way. Now, the reason that I said that would lead into our first drop is because I talked about the heat straps pullover there. I think it's called their quarter snap, I think. And they just released their deck jacket number 2, so version 2. And hallelujah, my big complaint about the first one was that the snaps were too close to the center of the storm flap. To me, that looks a little bit it looks a little weird. I mean, really, when they're positioned to the outside, like you'll see on almost every jacket that has a storm flap, they don't allow that extra bit of material to get in the way. Whereas if they're positioned more inboard, more center of that storm flap, and I can see why you would do that from a design perspective. You have a strip of fabric, you would want to shoot for the center of that for your snaps. But what they really want to do is move it to the edge, so that way there's not the loose fabric that can get caught, and since they're snaps, open up that storm placket. That sounds like an issue that maybe won't annoy you, but I can tell you this much. I've worked in things with snaps, and when you're moving around and whatever, especially if you're doing stuff with wood, like logs and things like that, or just anything that's heavy that you can hold on to, snaps just come undone all the time. And so that little bit right there might be enough to just be a real pain in the neck. I will say this too. I actually like their color choice better on this second version. Their first one was a green with like a cream colored mouton inside, which is a cool look, but I like this one better. So this is a green with like a almost like a brown mouton on the inside, and it looks really, really good. A little bit of history on this. So it was last year, maybe around this time, and I was talking to Heat Straps about what we were going to do for the workhorse, right? We've sold so many of these workhorses, and people love them so much. Like, what could we do next? And so we had done the light version, we had done the heavyweight version, we had done a wool version, but what else could we do? And I think, I don't know if it was Jordan or one of us said, what if we did like a lined one? And I said, man, it looks really cool is Weatherwool has their mouton jacket, but I know mouton's really expensive, but it's incredibly warm. And he goes, you know what? What if we could do that? And I'm like, yeah, but it's really expensive, He goes, yeah, but wouldn't it be cool to be able to have something that's incredibly heavy duty, really, really warm, just something that you can't compare to anything else on the market? And, how do you say no to that? So we ended up going with the mouton workhorse. Now that jacket, if you got one of those jackets, you know how serious this thing is. It was, matter of fact, they made the first one, and he goes, look, I'm going to have to increase the size of the overall pattern because of the volume that interior insulation takes up. That mouton is so thick that if you ordered a medium, it'd probably feel like a small because it's being taken up by that mouton. And it is something, I got to tell you, it honestly is too much for anything above 30 degrees, if I had to say. It is serious. So we made the mouton version. It actually sold out, and thank God, because they only had so much of this stuff, and I really didn't want that to leave them with a whole bunch of leftovers. It was $1,000 jacket, and I got a lot of pushback about that. People saying, how could you offer $1,000 work jacket? Nobody's going to work in this. Well, I'll tell you this much, especially in my time on the railroad, the coldest conditions I've ever worked in before that were in a parking garage. in the wintertime, hanging rigid. And the reason is because you're in a concrete structure, which seems to, it's colder inside than it is outside. There's no windows on a parking garage, so the wind just whips right through, and you're always exposed because you're reaching overhead. And as a matter of fact, it was the first time I ever bought like a union suit, right? Like a one-piece coverall insulated suit, and I would wear that. That was the coldest I had been. Until I worked nights on the railroad in New York. And that was, I mean, it was just, I couldn't believe it. You know, as everybody knows, the temperature dips at night, and you're just standing there and you're freezing. Well, I'll tell you this much. I would have gladly paid that money for that jacket to be warm then. I wish I had this jacket at that time. So my point in telling you that little story is because there are certain situations where that is absolutely justified. And if you are in freezing conditions, you will do almost anything to get out of them. People were trying everything on that job because we also had the moist air coming in from the river there too. So it just chilled you to the bone. It was really bad. And people were wearing everything. I remember people going out and they were buying Canada Goose jackets to wear, which are, $1,000 easy. And those would sometimes work, and people were doing all kinds of crazy things to try to stay warm with snowmobile suits and heating elements and all kinds of stuff. And some things worked and some things didn't. What worked for me, actually, believe it or not, is I would wear like a flannel shirt. I would wear my base layer, of course, underneath that. And then I would wear one of those Milwaukee heated jackets, or vests rather, underneath that, on top of that. And then on top of that whole that whole thing, I would put on a parka, and I would, crank up that vest to try to make some heat and keep it in with the parka. And it worked to a certain extent, but I had my Baffin boots on. I had everything I could, and it was just like, it gets so cumbersome when you're that bundled up that, matter of fact, that was when I started really looking into the layering system and trying to learn how that worked because we were so miserable. But in a case like that, Mouton absolutely works. I'm sorry it's taking me so long to get to this N1 deck jacket that they came out with because I guess the preamble is just too much. I'm boring myself. Anyway, so this is the version 2 of the Mouton N1 deck jacket. They did a really nice job with it, and I think that if you're somebody who just appreciates the heaviest of the heavy, well, that's what this is. And the deck jacket is a tried and true design. It looks great. It's $1,000. They have started with their 24-ounce waxed canvas. They lined it in genuine Mouton sheepskin, of course, in the torso pockets and the collar. I'm sorry. So it's lined in genuine Mouton sheepskin in the torso, the pockets, and the collar, and insulated with quilted wool batting in the sleeves. Okay. And so that means that, this thing is wool through and through, which is great. And also it accounts for a lot of that price. And so, yeah, they did a nice job. They even has storm cuffs on it. It's super duper heavy. This thing is gonna probably outlive you. And I will say that the price of $999 sounds really high. It is high. Let's face it. That's a lot of money. But I don't think the value is exactly, I don't think you're missing out on value here. Number one, all those materials are expensive. The shell material is probably the least expensive, but Mouton is incredibly expensive. If you look at deck jackets from any of the other reputable companies like Dehen or Ironheart or any of those other jackets, right? They're all in the $1,000 range. And matter of fact, I think the one from Dehen is like $1,200, $1,300. It's something like that. Probably the best bet going right now, if you look for one that's less expensive, is the one from UES. UES is total sleeper, by the way. If you don't know about UES and you like that kind of style and Japanese cut and all that, UES has a lot of great stuff. But anyway, this looks really good. I'm glad that they fixed that storm flap issue. Looks much better with that. I like this colorway better than the original colorway, so good on them for doing that because it looks great. And heat straps is slowly solidifying their place as expensive and premium, but a good value. Because if you look at anything else, like in comparison to this, for example, that Duckworth Snowcrest or the Weather Wool, Mouton jacket, which is $2,500. It's all very expensive, but when you start comparing apples to apples, heat straps actually doesn't look too bad. So it's expensive on its face, but you actually do get the value there. So I'm really happy to see that. Now, speaking of keeping warm, I saw these and I thought it was kind of interesting. I actually do have another pair of shoes from this company, and that's Gray's. They are the ones who make those woolen slipper boot things. And actually, I like those a lot. Those are the ones that I have, and I wear them a lot of times at this time of year. They're perfect for, number one, if you're going to kind of get up and, walk around the house and maybe you don't like the shearling type. For a long time, I was wearing those LL Bean shearling slippers, but they fall off. Like, there's nothing holding your heel. It only took one or two times where I like almost fell down the stairs or something that I was like, all right, I can't wear these things anymore. They're cozy and they're nice and everything like that if you're like, shuffling around the kitchen. But, my day is a little bit more varied than that. So even on a day where I'm like snowed in, I kind of want something a little bit better. So I like the Gray's wool ones. They've been really nice. But I saw these, and these are pretty cool. So this is their ripstop slipper boot, and it looks like, I think they even advertise them as sleeping bags for your feet. So that's kind of cool. They also did the smart thing by putting in a couple of air holes on the inside, so where your arch is. That's a good idea. I believe that they have a cork footbed in them, so that'll also conform to your foot, but it also adds a little bit of moisture absorbing properties, because otherwise these could become pretty nasty pretty quick. But it does seem like they understand that, and they've done what they could to mitigate it. The nice thing about these too is, you put them on, and like for me, you got to kind of walk outside and let the dog go and do their business or whatever. These will have that capability because of that sole. And the best thing about these is that they're marked down right now. I don't know for how long, from $118 to $88. So that's a pretty good discount there. And it looks like right now, all sizes are available. So I wanted to bring these up. I don't know if it's just this navy and black color, but no, it looks like it's also in the olive and black color, which would probably be my pick because they look kind of neat. But if you're looking for a cozy boot or a cozy slipper type boot that maybe could do double duty around the house, this is probably a good option. A long time ago, when I was operating a tow truck, we used to have, do you remember those plastic? They were usually yellow. They took those gigantic box batteries with like the spring terminals on them, and then they would have like 2 candle power. That's what we used to use in the wrecker. And then I bought one of those quadruple D mag light things. They kind of double as a weapon, because we're going to pick up cars at night. It's always dark. You got to look underneath the vehicle to find out where, you can hook on your J hook and pull the thing up onto your flatbed or whatever. And so I had enough. I was like, all right, these things suck. I got to get a good flashlight. So I ended up buying I was talking to a cop buddy of mine because we worked at the police department. And he turned me on to this company called Phoenix, and he goes, yeah, check it out. He goes, I have one on my belt, and, a lot of cops will use Streamlight, but he goes, I like this Phoenix better. And at the time it was the PD12 or the whatever. It was an older version and had a full output at 280 lumens, which at the time, that doesn't sound like anything now, was unbelievable. And it blew away anything I had. And the only thing was it had these proprietary batteries, the 18650 batteries that you have to put on a charger and all that stuff, but it was worth it. And I still have that light. And it's in my tool bag that I bring with me whenever I go to someplace to do some work or whatever outside of work. And it has served me well and never, ever let me down. So I've bought several Phoenix lights since then, many as gifts. I've given away a lot. My mom has one, my father-in-law has one, my sister has one, and I give them away because it's one of those gifts where you're like, look, this thing it kind of changed my life, like going from crappy flashlights to a really good one that'll last forever. And so I wanted to give that to other people as well, and I did, and they really like them. So I've bought several since then. Like I said, I still have, it's a TK12. That's what it was. I still have my old TK12, and I have bought a couple other ones. The one, though, that I got a couple weeks ago is like the next evolution of Phoenix light. This is the LD45R. The cool thing about this is it has an adjustable beam. So if you remember the old mag lights, you used to be able to turn the head of it, and it would go from flood to spot. Now, flood wasn't very good and spot wasn't very good. It never really had a hot center to it. It was always like a C shape. So it's like, do you put what you're looking at like inside the C? I don't know. It was never really that good, but it was better than nothing. But these, on the other hand, have a really nice beam and everything like that. And so this is also on sale right now for $159, marked down from $214. So this is the first one that I've owned of an LED flashlight that has an adjustable beam to it. It'll go from flood to spot, and it's nice to be able to have that ability, because sometimes you don't necessarily need that distance. For me, a lot of times where I'm working, I want a big, bright, broad beam that illuminates the whole area and just helps you work within close quarters. I don't need a hot spot on something. I'm not doing like search and rescue or something. So this has the ability to go from one to the other if you want. It also has 7 modes. It's rechargeable, so all you do is plug in a USB-C Type-C to it. There's a little tiny LCD readout on it that will tell you not only the lumens that you're using, but also the percentage of the battery. The max lumens on this is 2800, which is crazy. Anybody else remember the days of the Olight SR? What the heck was it? It was called the SR. It was a Search and Rescue 90, I think, which at the time was like the brightest light you could get. It was like 9,000 lumens, and it cost like $600. And it came with a carrying case, like a shoulder strap. But if you wanted the brightest of the bright, that's what you get, until you got to like HID lights and stuff. But yeah, this thing's awesome. And I did a little bit of a demonstration on my Instagram, if you saw that. And it's unbelievable how different the brightness modes are. You can go from like 150 to 350, I think, to 1,000, then 2,800, and you could use whatever you want. Also has strobe and SOS and all that stuff. It's awesome. It's on sale. You should go check it out, because they do tend to sort of sell out, but then they restock. So go and check it out. I forgot to put this on my gift guide, but I would have included it if I had known. A company I've never heard of before is Hidden Aces. And I saw this and I was really interested, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying, don't buy this. It's just too expensive for what you get, in my opinion. However, it does look like it has some nice details that maybe some of these other companies could adopt. And it's always good to look at all the options out there. And just when I thought I had heard of every single wax jacket company, here comes another one. So this is Hidden Aces. This is their KA6201 Pollux Wax Canvas Jacket. It costs $663. That's too much money for what you get. Now, what you get is pretty interesting, so let's get into that a little bit more. So this is British Haley Stevenson's wax fabric with an olive oil-based wax. Their patented Everwax finish is odorless, they go through the whole thing. If you've had, Haley Stevenson's makes a whole bunch of different types of wax materials, from crazy to simple to whatever, but you know, a lot of companies make their stuff. The Triple Aught Design was using Haley Stevenson's that I covered not too long ago. We did actually a Workhorse, the one that had the camouflage. We did one of those. That was Haley Stevenson's. So it's 100% cotton, 100% cotton lining. And so this is it says 340 gram. I can't do the conversion right now. I forgot what that is. It says extra heavyweight, or Everwax heavyweight wax canvas. I'll put the thing up on the thing here to show you what it is. It's made in Germany, which is pretty cool. And that might account for some of this price difference, especially if it's being imported. There are taxes and duties and all that stuff, so who knows. But it also has some cool stuff, like it looks like it's lined on the placket, on the inside of the placket. Their photos aren't very good, but the inside of the placket is corduroy. Of course, it has a corduroy collar as well, a nice looking tartan lining, and they have some really good looking snaps. I also like their approach to their pockets. That's a very interesting look. So, and it has an elbow patch, and it looks like a latch, like a strap for the closure on the cuff, which is kind of cool looking as well. So you get some stuff that's a little bit different from some of the other companies out there that are offering more or less different flavors of the same type of jacket. This is a little bit different. I think it looks really cool. I don't think it's worth that price increase, but I wanted to talk about it because when I discover a new brand, I sort of wanted to tell you about it. And this is a new one to me. So, you know, if anybody has any experience with this company, let me know. I also want to try to include companies that are from other countries, because I have a tendency to focus on domestic stuff. And just when I become aware of something like this, I want to talk about it. Finally, this week, Hiroshi Kato came out with a new jacket, and that's the Propeller in Melton Wool, which is $458. That's not cheap, but it's a wool jacket, which is kind of an A2 style. Matter of fact, it's not even kind of an A2 style. This is an A2 style, and it looks like it does have side entry pockets. So a lot of times A2s, like my A2 Heron from, or actually I have an A1 Heron from Himmel Brothers. It's top entry only, and traditionally that's the way it was. But then they realized that people actually like putting their hands in their pockets, so they made them side entry as well. And so this has that, which is nice. It makes it a lot more user friendly. And it has it looks like a universal. Yep. So like a vintagey kind of universal zipper, which is first of all like kind of the only hardware on this thing. So you want it to be nice looking. Kato brand has never really let me down. Anything that they've ever made has some cool tweaks to it that are a little bit different and unique, but they've never let me down as far as quality goes. And I think that they actually also they offer a lot of value as well. And it's usually a pretty good bang for your buck. They have a lot of unique things. Like I know that they have the only 4-way stretch denim in the industry, which is awesome. And this looks really, really good. Now, the only thing I will say is, so it's 16-ounce Melton wool, but this is not pure wool. So just know that right off the bat. What's the difference? Okay, so it's 80% wool, 20% nylon. Not a game changer because, you know, that's okay. And that's going to be plenty for most people. So I don't want to be snobby and say, like, if it's not 100% wool, I'm not interested. This looks really good. And I can tell you right off the bat that just knowing Kato, their fits are... the sleeves are very narrow. They have sort of that, for the most part, that Japanese cut. So if it doesn't work for you, like it doesn't work for me, unfortunately, it just seems like their tops, with the exception of the camp shirt, are a little bit too slim. You know, I would try to, I don't know what the return policy is, but you may want to just pay attention, because if this doesn't fit you, then, you know, whatever. Like I could tell from here, like those sleeves would never fit me. Sadly, because they look really good, but they look long on the model and thin, and I have short stubby arms, and so that's not going to work for me. So, but it's a good looking jacket, nice and simple. This is kind of like, to me, one of those like one and done jackets where you're like, yep, that's what I want. That's all I need. And, it looks good. And the price isn't bad either. Well, I hope everything else has been going well in your world. You know, the world in general, things are kind of topsy-turvy right now. A lot of insane things have happened. A lot of crazy stuff is coming down, and I don't know what's going to happen in the future. If I did, I wouldn't be doing this. I would have played the lotto and won that and be living in a cabin somewhere. But, you know, what I think is important, no matter how difficult the times get, and, you know, compounding that is the holidays, of course. It's always important to sort of check in with those around you and make sure that they're okay. And be that person, if you can, for others. It's really difficult. I have a friend, I may have spoken about him before, who is in a situation where he really doesn't have anybody. His parents have checked out, his siblings have checked out, and you know, I try to give him a call once a week and just see how he's doing and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, a lot of times that's almost kind of a wellness check. Just like, hey, you're good, right? You know, like, because he's in a situation that just simply will not ever improve, and he knows it, and he's trying to hold it together. It's a very difficult thing. I know that we don't all have the kind of budget emotionally to be like that for everybody. And for me, it's always taking care of my family is priority number one. The way you do that is through your job and being, you know, all that stuff. It's, you know, of course it's multifaceted, but I do have a little bit of a budget in there, and time and emotional energy that I can give to a friend who is in a situation that simply isn't going to improve. And so I check in with him, and I try to make sure that everything's okay with him. And I try to be that for people who I can, and be able to give of yourself in that way. But, you know, like emotional burnout, and what do they call that? Empathy burnout, especially when you hear about all this stuff on, you know, the news and stuff. It's easy to do, right? Like, how are you going to feel bad for everyone and everything? At some point, you just become apathetic. You just go, you know, okay, well, yeah, that sucks, but crappy things are happening everywhere, it seems, so why do I care? And it's almost like that's how you can protect yourself, right? Because if you were falling apart and really invested in everything, you simply would not be able to survive. So I think that being able to compartmentalize and take care of the people who you were responsible for, and maybe if there's any additional capacity there, is important. It's just, you know, I'm being kind of an advocate for mental health and taking care of that aspect is I see that as something very important that most of the time guys simply won't talk about. And if they If they do, it's usually very heavily veiled. You can't tell that somebody is asking for help. That could just come in the form of somebody saying, "Hey, you want to hang out?" Because they don't know any other way to say, "I can't be alone," or "I don't want to be alone," or I might hurt myself if I am alone." And if you've dealt with suicide in any way, you know that's kind of the way it goes. And I've certainly had that in my life before too. And most of the time it comes out of nowhere. But I think that maybe if we could pay attention, maybe there were signs, and I just I never want to be in that position again where I feel that I could have done something. And simply knowing that you can't be there for everybody, but you can be there for some, is important, and knowing where your limits are. And it's tough, especially for men, I think. You're just not willing to talk about it, not willing to admit weakness, and before you know it, it's too late. So, I mean, I've seen that just too many times in my life to never say anything else about it, Anyway, I'm going to go to the patrons only segment right now. And what we are going to do in the patrons segment is we're going to take a look at the stuff that I have that is kind of surplus, I guess. I've bought a lot of things for comparisons, a lot of things that I will never use again, and I want to get rid of. So I'm going to bring you over to my clothing rack, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I have, which I'm looking to get rid of. The way it's going to go, of course, is, Loafer Slayer is going to have first crack at it, and then second tier, and then last tier, and then eventually it'll go out to everybody. But I got to get rid of some stuff. Eventually, to use that great old Fight Club term or saying, the things you own end up owning you. So I'm going to go show you the stuff that I have for sale, and if you're interested in any of it, hit me up in Patreon. That's the way we'll do business. But for the rest of you, let's catch up next week. Been great talking to you. Even though it's probably been not great listening to me in my scratchy voice. But I'm glad to be here with you this morning. Take care.